Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now.
Hey guys, I'm Dylan the Machete Zanetti. I'm from Gold Coast, Australia, and I'm currently a Muay Thai fighter, but very soon I'll be transitioning into MMA full time. So I was born in Sydney, Australia, but moved to Gold Coast when I was about 2 years old and had a pretty good upbringing. I always had good parents. They put me into martial arts when I was very young. I got started in karate when I was 3 years old, and eventually when I was about 12, 13, I said I wanted to fight to one of my karate instructors, and he got me to go to a boxing gym. So I did boxing for a few years before eventually going to a Muay Thai gym, doing a lot of sparring, and eventually had my first fight when I was 15, and then just been tracking down the Muay Thai road since then while doing a little bit of jiu-jitsu on the side. So the first fight at 15, probably didn't train the way I should have for it, just because you know, your first fight, you don't really know what you're doing, and I was kind of transitioning between karate, boxing and Muay Thai, like going to 3 different gyms. I didn't really have a lot of structure, but yeah, it was a good experience, and obviously kind of got me to where I was, and I ended up winning the fight. So it was a K1 fight, amateur, and it was a good building block for me to kind of get to where I am now. So that fight kind of made me realize how hard you have to train for a fight, and ever since that fight, it's kind of made me realize how in condition I have to be for a fight, and I always make it a priority not to be slacking in the conditioning area when it comes to fights. So yeah, going into my first amateur MMA fight, I had about probably 20 Muay Thai fights all up, but that fight kind of taught me the differences between Muay Thai and MMA, and that you can't really like split your focus too much. So at the moment I'm doing Muay Thai as my main focus, and I'm still doing a bit of jiu-jitsu and wrestling, but I'm not really sparring MMA because I feel like when you try to do both, you kind of confuse yourself a bit. Like there was a few times in that fight where I knocked my opponent's mouth guard out, and then he would go down and pick it up, and just because of the Muay Thai brain, I wouldn't go down and hit him. Like I wouldn't even think about the ground and pound, or you know, just the fact of stepping into a cage and not having the Thai music, you know, all these little things, they do add up and they kind of change the environment. And now that I've kind of felt that environment and I've felt that experience, I believe going to my next MMA fight, I'm going to be a lot better. I'm going to be a lot more mentally prepared, and also going into that fight as well, you know, during the fight, it was probably the most tired I've been since my first amateur kickboxing fight, just having that change of environment. But even though I've fought high-level Muay Thai, you know, I've fought some good dudes in Australia, I've fought some good guys in Thailand. Like, it's just a different experience going into a ring versus going into a cage. So any Muay Thai fighters that are thinking of transitioning to MMA, I would highly suggest that you have at least 1 or 2 amateur fights, so that way you get that feeling. So when it matters and you're going into a pro fight, you don't, you know, have this big pressure and this big kind of difference, because it is definitely a different sport, and you have to keep that into, you have to take that into consideration when you're going into the cage. So coming from the Gold Coast, Australia, I'm from one of the best gyms in Australia. I'm from Strikeforce Gym, which is a pure Muay Thai gym. We've got coaches like Mark Pease, who he's trained many world champions, some of the best in Australia. Mr. C, who's one of my main coaches, and he's been pad holder for me since I was 16 years old. And he's really believed in me since the start, so I've got a lot of love for him. And we've got some great fighters. We've got Chad Collins, who he's just beat Panamoon. He's the Rise World Champion, WBC World Champion, WMC World Champion at 63.5 kilos. We've got some of the best guys in Australia, like we've got James Honey, who's perfect for me because he fights at 72.5 kilos. I fight at 69 kilos, so he's a great training partner for me, and he's probably the best middleweight in Australia at the moment. We've got Jaden Enyard, who's a WMC World Champion, and then other than that, like I kind of just go to different gyms and do some training. So I got a good mate, Josh King. We do a fair bit of training together. He's on the rise as a Muay Thai star. He's coming back over to Thailand pretty soon. So yeah, all these guys, they've definitely helped me become who I am, and I think everyone has their each individual role. Like Chad taught me a lot about clinching and about the Thai style. James taught me a lot about boxing. You know, sparring rounds with Jaden. Jaden's like 90 kilos, and me being a fucking 70 kilo fighter, it's, you know, it's good to have hard rounds with big guys like that, and got to learn how to use my size to my advantage, you know. Mark's taught me a lot about Muay Thai, Mr. C, and then, you know, Josh and his trainer, Clayton Collier, and his dad, like they've all just kind of brought me into this world of Muay Thai and made me a very good fighter. And then also me training Jiu-Jitsu at CMBT and some wrestling at CMBT, that's kind of been my merging into MMA while still focusing on Muay Thai. I think one of my biggest accomplishments in Muay Thai is probably my last performance back in Australia. There's a lot of kind of shit that went on before that fight. Like three months before the fight, like when the fight just got booked, I got dropped on the back of my head and got a really bad concussion. And I was dealing with that for like months on end. And I thought it was 100%, but then going into that fight 2 weeks before, I was boxing sparring with James, and he hit me in the head a few too many times because I was just being an idiot and running forward and trying to hit him, and concussion symptoms flared up. Like I was dizzy, I felt like vomiting, all that stuff. And then I called Mark and I said, like, you know, I don't know if I can fight. Like this is been going on. And that morning actually, he had like told me, oh, you've got a new opponent. So a week out, I don't remember the last time I've had like an opponent stay the same. Like it's probably been like 4 years since I've had an opponent for X amount of time. I always get pullouts and I always get opponent changes, but you know, it keeps you on your toes. But anyway, I called Mark and I was just like, man, I don't know if I can do this fight. Like my concussion's fucked, like it's popping up. And then he just said to me like, well, you're very skilled, you're very good. This is one of the biggest shows in Australia. And I believe that you've got what it takes to kind of go out there and put on a show and show Australia who you are. So I went out there and I just kind of had the mentality of, like I'm gonna fight, but I just can't get hit basically. And I got hit clean 7 times in 8.5 minutes before stopping my opponent with leg kicks. So just showing my skill set on such a big show like Eruption was definitely a massive accomplishment for me, and it really showed people who I am in Australia. But the plan is to go back to Australia this year and have a couple more fights, and I've gotten, you know, so much better over at Bangtao, and I believe that I'm just going to stamp my name on the map as one of the best fighters in Australia this year. So this isn't my first time being out in Thailand. I came out here in 2022. I went to Bangkok, trained at Smart Packaroon's gym for a little bit, and eventually ended up leaving that gym just because there wasn't really enough people that were my size. So went and trained at Sassy Prappa for a week, and then I went out to Isan, and I trained in Isan for about 2 months. I had 3 fights out at the Isan gym, and it was a great experience to just kind of go out there in the middle of nowhere. Like the nearest 7-Eleven was over 10-minute drive away, which if you're in Thailand, you know there's a 7-Eleven every 2 minutes. So it was literally in the middle of nowhere, an hour and a half to the nearest airport, and me and one of my mates, we were just in the sticks. Like we were the only 2 Aussies and only 2 like white people out there. And that definitely made me a better fighter for a few things. Like it made me a lot more mentally tough, just the training and like not being able to communicate properly and all that. And obviously you're training with just Thais, and there were so many Thais around my weight, so I got very good at that gym. And then yeah, I ended up having a fight in Phuket out of that gym. So the promoter flew us to Phuket, and at that time, I was obviously knew I was going to do MMA because I'd trained MMA in the past. So I decided to come and check out Bangtao, and I was very sore and bruised up from a sharp fight. Like my shins were fucked, my elbow was swollen, like my face was bruised up. So I hit up one of the guys back home who knows Frank quite well, and he got us in contact, and I came over, had a look at one of the wrestling classes just to kind of see what the gym was like. And that's when I kind of set the goal, like, okay, I'm going to go back to Australia, I'm going to work, I'm going to save up, and I'm going to come out to Bangtao in 2023. And just went back, worked, fought, got some money, came back out to Bangtao this time. And since being here, I've definitely built a great relationship with the coaches, the Thai coaches like Ajahn Watt, Crew Beer, Crew M, Crew Kron. Like they're all kind of helping me become a better fighter now. And I've had, I believe, 6 or 7 Muay Thai fights out of the gym and 1 MMA fight. And just me looking at myself from back then versus now, like I'm definitely a lot more of a smarter, cleaner, technical fighter now. And that's all because of the trainers here. And on top of that, I'm now wrestling and I'm now doing jiu-jitsu, and I believe that I'm going to have such a good base for when I eventually go into MMA that I think I'm going to be an unstoppable force. There's a lot that kind of attracts me to Thailand. Like, one, it's a lot cheaper than back home, so you can kind of focus a lot more. You don't have to be worrying about working and money and all that. Like, that's one thing. Another thing is the people. Like, there are so many people from, especially in Phuket, there's so many people from all around the world that you kind of get this one hot spot where you've got like, you know, you've got Russians, you've got Aussies, you've got Canadians, you've got Americans, you've got like Portuguese people, you've got like so many people come to this one spot to train, and you get like not only the different cultures, but you get different styles of fighting, and that helps a lot as well. And obviously being in Bangtao, we're like 5 minutes from the beach, so you can have a hard training session in the morning, go down to the beach, recover, chill, come back, like go home, have your nap, come back in the afternoon, train hard. Like the training's great, but also the lifestyle's great here. And you got pretty much everything you need here. Like Phuket is a lot easier to live in than what Isan was, because in Isan, you know, there's like they're not great at communication because they're, you know, they speak a different language to you. You know, even if you know Thai, Isan Thai is a different language to Thai. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's I just love everything about Thailand, the people, the community, the training. Like, it's just, this is where I want to be. I don't really want to be anywhere else. I think probably one of the biggest obstacles as an up-and-coming fighter is probably just the mentality and the commitment and all that, because fighting is something that takes all of you. It's not something that, you know, you can do like part-time. Like, if you're not fully committed, your opponent could be fully committed and they're gonna fuck you up. Like, this isn't a sport where you can just play around with it, you know? Like, you've got to be fully committed, and that means like everything from, you know, you've got to be on top of your diet, your sleep, you know, you've got to be watching film, you've got to be doing like, you've got to be taking care of your social media so you can get your name out there. There's so much things that come into contact, but also you've got to find the balance of like living life, but you can't live life too much, because then you kind of start to take your focus away. So you've always got to kind of have that balance. And I see a lot of people on social media these days, they focus too much on the social media to where like they think social media is fighting. Like with me, yes, I'm very active on social media, but I don't let it consume me. Like, I go on, I do my posts, I get off, I chat to people on social media, all that type of stuff. But a lot of people, they kind of forget to do the other things. Like, they don't watch film, they, you know, they don't speak to other fighters about their experience. So yeah, I'd say the main thing, and especially if you're at Bangtao, like, you've got so many high-level fighters out here that you can kind of learn from and speak to. Like, you know, so one of the biggest things is just keeping focused and knowing where to put your energy, and that definitely takes time and experience to kind of figure out. So I'm lucky enough that I'm only young. I'm only 21 years old, so I've definitely got a lot more time. If I was a bit older, I probably wouldn't be doing the Muay Thai thing. I'd probably be in MMA now, but my kind of time frame, I'd say, is about 2 to 3 more years in Muay Thai, because I know I've got the potential to do some big things in Muay Thai. I know I've got the potential to build a good name and, you know, get some money and like be able to build enough of a name for myself to where I can support my MMA career when it comes around, whether that be through like doing online work, courses, PT, seminar, all that type of stuff. So yeah, I'd say about 2 to 3 more years in Muay Thai, but during that time I'm still going to be doing jiu-jitsu, I'm still going to be doing wrestling. That way when I do go on MMA and I do fully focus, it's not like I'm catching up to all these people. It's like my skills are still there, but now that I'm putting more emphasis into MMA, it's now like I'm just getting better at everything, and you know, it's just going to be better for my career in the long run. There's so many people I'd like to thank, but the main two would have to be my mum and my dad. You know, my mum especially for bringing me to training every day when I was younger and, you know, paying for it and kind of helping me build a skill set while I was younger. My dad for teaching me a lot of life lessons, and he went through a fair bit of struggles when I was about 16, and I did learn a lot of lessons from him, how to deal with struggles. So I appreciate you a lot for that, Dad. And then I've got my friends and my training partners, obviously Chad. We've got Savas out here who's helping me a lot. We've got Josh King, Clayton Collier, Mr. C, Mark Pease, all these people that have helped me become into the fighter I am today. Obviously George and Frank have been part of that when it comes to wrestling and all that. And then going down to the social media, you know, everyone that follows me on social media, anyone that likes my stuff, comments, like I see it all and I really do appreciate it. And everyone that subscribes to my YouTube, I really appreciate that as well, because I do have content that's coming out every week, and you know, I'm pushing that. And if you haven't already, go subscribe to that and check it out.